This is City Talk. I'm Eric Schmidt. Thank you for tuning in. On this edition of City Talk, we're going to find out what's new, what's challenging, what's ahead in the great city of Tualatin, Oregon. The last 20 months, nearly 2 years, have been more interesting for city governments across the country, across the nation, across the state, and across Washington County. The pandemic has generated a whole host of problems that had to be solved, while at the same time keeping as many public services running efficiently and effectively as possible. Joining us now on City Talk is the mayor of Tualatin, the Honorable Frank Bubenik. Mayor Bubenik, thank you so much for being with us on City Talk today.
My pleasure to be here.
When we spoke last, you described how you and the City Council had to react to the COVID pandemic and how the city of Tualatin had to reconfigure the way that it operated to a large degree. Are those reconfigurations going to be permanent once we're done with the virus once and for all?
I'm hoping eventually we'll get back to our larger events. We had a pivot on some of the bigger events like the Pumpkin Regatta, our Holiday Lights, Viva Tualatin, the Crawfish Festival. All those things were put on the shelf for the last 2 years now. And I'm looking forward to where we can start meeting again. City staff basically took the same ideas as those big events and made them smaller ideas. For example, a huge success last year was our Holiday Lights Parade, where a group of cars would go through each of the neighborhoods here in Tualatin on each of the Saturdays in December. That was such a huge hit that it's back this year. So the first Saturday of December, we kick it off with 3 parades over the month. And the demand, if you will, or the folks who want to participate has been super high because it's a lot of fun to drive with your vehicles all lit up with the inflatables, and people are out in their sidewalks waving to you. Some people even have barbecue pits going and the like. So people really enjoy the event. We did, instead of doing the big pumpkin regatta, there was a golden pumpkin search. There were a lot of pumpkin related events. So we're trying to continue the civic involvement and the events that are outdoors to get people out and socializing, but in a little bit more safer environment than being a whole bunch of people packed into the commons for the regatta.
The Tualatin Tailgate. What a great idea.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to the crawfish. I mean, 2 years without the crawfish, that's one of our signature events. So hopefully, next summer we'll be back to normal.
What are some of the lessons you as mayor learned about city government? I would imagine that you have to be flexible and open-minded in these times.
The resiliency of our city employees. COVID hit, and people had to take a step back. And with the leadership of our city manager, Cheryl Lombos, and her management team, the city responded super well. People were very excited with some of the ideas the city came through with. Our maintenance services continued. All the services the city provided were maintained. Even it took a little while for the library to come back on board, but we kept things going. Building permits still got approved. Things took a little longer, but the city was still functioning and delivering services to our community.
Did the federal dollars, I think it's called ARPA dollars, did they help Tualatin at all?
There was 2 phases of money. So we had the initial money that came out in, was it late 2020, where we distributed about $1 million worth of grant funds to businesses that needed that money to get through the difficult winter last year. That provided them with business support, rental assistance. We gave, like I said, about $1 million out to about 110 companies or firms here in Tualatin. Majority of them being, small family-owned, minority-owned businesses. And now we had the second phase of money where Tualatin was awarded approximately $6.1 million to distribute over the next 3 years. We're still planning on what we're going to do with that. The big thing we have to do with that is make sure we don't fund things that can't be sustained. So a lot of the dollars will be used for one-time improvements. So we're looking at improvements to infrastructure, maybe supporting some not-for-profits that need additional assistance, helping out those households in Tualatin where they're falling through the gaps where they're not getting state or county assistance to make it from day to day. Help out those small businesses that still need a little bit of assistance. And of course, the city lost a little bit of revenue during the COVID crisis. So, replace those dollars in our coffers so that we don't have to go out to uh, bond or anything like that, that we stay financially stable, which we are, which was one of the big pluses for COVID, that our budget office, our finance folks kept us on budget and we're in fine financial shape.
How would you characterize the recovery? Are businesses coming back?
Businesses are coming back in Tualatin pretty well. We're heavy on manufacturing and industrial. So a lot of those businesses continue to operate during COVID. They had to deal with mask mandates, and that's where uh, we gave out PPE, personal protective equipment. So free PPE was given out to businesses through the Business Recovery Center, which was an operation that our economic development director, Jonathan Taylor, came up with in conjunction with Washington County to help out businesses. And it's located within the Tualatin Chamber of Commerce. And those folks make sure businesses are in touch with any kind of grants they can get, make sure they get all the personal protective equipment they can use. So that financial burden is off them. But businesses here did well. We had the restaurants, I think, hospitality was hit the hardest. And we try to be flexible with them. And, when we awarded our grant dollars, a big majority of those were hospitality related businesses.
We all have a tendency to look back these days, wishing all of this was behind us, but we also have an obligation to look forward. You are looking forward to another serious discussion about finally bringing light rail to Tualatin. It's a discussion that has a history, but are you optimistic about the future of that new discussion about light rail?
I'm very optimistic. TriMet is working with folks in Washington, D.C. with the signature, was it yesterday, of President Biden's infrastructure bill. There's a thought that the federal government might be able to finance a bigger portion of the Southwest Corridor plan than was proposed a year or so ago. And in doing that, it would lower the amount of funds that would be needed to be collected by taxes. So I'm looking forward to hear about the finance package and getting light rail down to Bridgeport Village. I know that they're very early stages of discussions where they're talking to all the folks that are on the route. There's also discussions about, remember, there were some road projects that were involved with the Southwest Corridor, because we've got the biggest problem we still have today, and it's not getting any better. We're back to pre-COVID congestion on I-5, is getting cars off the road and getting people in and out of the area, ideally on public transit.
Would light rail make a difference in the congestion in Tualatin?
I believe so. We have a lot of folks driving into Portland, and many of those folks are coming from outside of the city. We have a lot of folks coming from Marion and Yamhill counties. So the plan was, if the Southwest Corridor was built, we'd have two large parking structures for those folks to basically park at this park and ride here in Tualatin, get out of their cars and jump on the train. And that would relieve the stress of those vehicles being on the road between here and Portland. It also would enhance events at night. The 96 bus doesn't run 24/7. The Southwest Corridor would. So if you wanted to go to a Blazer game or wanted to go to the airport, you could use the Southwest Corridor train, the light rail train, instead of driving.
That would make a big difference, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Part of being mayor, Mr. Mayor, is ribbon cutting on major projects. Later this month, I understand you'll be cutting the ribbon on a project known as the Garden Corner Curves. Could you describe that project for us and what it means to Tualatin going forward?
Sure. The ribbon cutting is actually this Saturday from 9:30 to noon. The Garden Corner Curves are over near Ibach Park. So if you know where the Tualatin High School is, it's in that area. The Garden Corner Curves were known as being very treacherous. It's a series of curves with no sidewalks, no safety at all for bikes and peds, some serious drop-offs on the side of the road, and historically it's been one of the biggest projects the city wanted to fix. Even when I became councilor, 8-10 years ago, part of our Tualatin Moving Forward project, the bond project, that $20 million project, is paying for the fix that's going to be revealed. The road is actually open now, but it's not all done yet as far as fencing and landscaping and the like. but about $3 million of the $20 million is being used to fix that. So it's now bike and ped safe, pedestrian safe. So vehicles can navigate the curves safer, and you don't have to worry about getting run over by a vehicle when you're riding your bicycle or walking through there. So this has been long awaited for. So I think it's going to be a big fun event. There's going to be cider, donuts. The Tualatin High School band is going to be marching down the road and playing. So if you want to come out between 9:30 and noon on this Saturday for the big reveal ribbon cutting.
And we're recording this on November the 16th, so count your days. A former mayor of Tualatin wanted me to ask you a question about the Salt Creek Parkway. Commissioner Roy Rogers wanted to find out what it's going to take to get the Salt Creek Parkway and 124th off the ground and get it running.
The parkway is there. What the controversy is the bridge, the extension of the bridge over the Basalt Canyon. So the idea is that the Basalt Creek Parkway will extend to Graham's Ferry Road and then continue on over the Basalt Creek Canyon and end on Boone's Ferry Road. We've got some questions about the environmental impacts and the impacts on the neighbors in that area: sound, water, riparian. It's a wetland. So we're going to work in conjunction with the county on some of the questions that we still have. There's moderate support for the bridge, but I think through increased partnership between the county and the city, we might be able to get it to the finish line. But right now, I have a majority of councilors who have some serious concerns and are not very supportive of the bridge being completed at this time. But in my discussions with Chair Harrington and Commissioner Rogers, I think there's a spirit of cooperation and partnership in the coming years, because between that and we have residents who are super frustrated with the amount of traffic on southern lower Boone's Ferry Road. So basically the area between Horizon Christian School and Wilsonville, that is increasingly being more and more congested. And we need to figure out on how to decrease that congestion, because if we're going to have this new bridge dumping trucks onto lower Boone's Ferry Road, they're going to have to be able to, travel freely and get down to I-5 without, causing additional bottlenecks on lower Boone's Ferry Road.
You alluded to the infrastructure bill a little earlier in this conversation. What are those federal dollars going to mean to Tualatin when they finally come in? It's over $1 billion for the state of Oregon.
We're looking at hopefully a lot of, one of the biggest complaints in Tualatin is traffic and congestion. So a lot of infrastructure dollars going to fix those spots that we can fix. We're never going to build our way or pay our way out of the where it's congestion free here in Tualatin, but we can make it so it's a little easier each day, make it easier to get from point A to point B in a reasonable amount of time. Like I mentioned, we're going to give about $6 million in over the next 2 years. The first tranche of money was supposed to be here in July of this year, and the second tranche of money is July of next year, and we have 3 years to spend it. So what we're doing is we're waiting to see on Washington County is going to do with their money, see what the state's going to do, and we're looking at our surrounding cities to see what we can partner on and use our dollars to the best benefit of all the folks in the region.
If you could wave a magic wand, Mayor Bubenik, what would you do to get the metro area, up to speed, so to speak, on the issue of transportation and traffic? What can we do to secure more public transportation in the metro area?
The frustration I have is, and I'm always sounding off about this with TriMet, is we have the TriMet has a spoke and wheel set up where if you picture Portland being the center of the wheel and its spokes going out to the suburbs, that really doesn't work anymore because there's a lot of travel between the spokes, and the model of having to basically go from Tualatin into Portland to get to Oregon City doesn't work. It ends up making a trip like 2.5 hours. Even a trip from Tualatin to Hillsborough can take you an hour and a half. So TriMet needs to resolve this outdated plan of the hub and spoke and figure out how the spokes can connect. And we also have, the need for a lot of our transit is focused on north-south. There's very few options here in Tualatin to go east-west. So I have a lot of veterans who need to go to the VA Center in Oregon City. And ideally, the dream is to have that east-west bus between here and Oregon City and Clackamas Town Center, and we're working on that right now. We're putting together a Ride Connect shuttle that will work with Smart to get folks from here to Oregon City as a pilot project here in the next coming year. And it will also assist people getting down Borland Road who get services from the Borland Free Clinic and the Tualatin Food Pantry. So east-west connections is a frustration for me, as is for anything when you're going between the spokes of TriMet system.
Yeah. Well said. I understand that better now. Thank you. Another issue that became very acute during the pandemic is affordable housing. Metro voters passed a housing bond a few years back. How is Tualatin addressing the issue of affordable housing?
We just completed our land use study and housing needs study, and we're going through the process of complying with the Oregon legislature's mandate on missing middle housing. So to create those dwellings where they're not $500,000 units, that they're affordable, and that there's a wide variety of housing options for different income levels. We're also working with community partners for affordable housing to build a permanently affordable housing complex down in southern Tualatin. They're looking at about 100 plus units. And what makes this place special is that it will have 3-bedroom units, which are a rarity in the area, so that a family can, get placed into permanently affordable housing for a little while until they transition into a more permanent situation. So we're looking forward to it's going through all the land use process and planning. Ideally, it'll be open in 2 years if everything goes right. So between the combination of having some of the Metro bond dollars help pay for the CEPA facility, and also working within city regulations, some kind of incentives, working with builders to build more affordable housing for folks. Maybe it'd be nice to see the days again of some kind of residence for $300,000 instead of $500,000.
Yeah. I think you're dreaming, Mayor, but that's just my personal opinion.
I mean, we might be able to do it condos and townhomes and with very creative development. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean,
We can
single
always
family
hope.
residences. I mean, the Oregon legislature, single family housing zoning doesn't exist any longer. So you can have multi-family units in the middle of a residential zone due to the change in the law. So we're making changes to our development code to allow for that, but make it so that it's a livable area and people enjoy living in Tualatin. We don't want the denseness, the closeness that you see in some places of Portland, because it just drives people insane that if they're on top of each other. So we're trying to, we're going to make our flavor of Tualatin on this development code, and be able to be creative in supplying housing to the people who would love to work and live in Tualatin.
Affordable housing for people in need also means finding help for people with behavioral health issues often enough. How can Tualatin combine the need for a safe shelter with the need for adequate treatment for humans' problems?
That, I think, comes with the people who deal the most with those folks with mental health issues is our Tualatin Police Department, and supplying the police department with those resources and connections to get those folks into the kind of help they need. Tualatin, in conjunction with Tigard, has hired a Master's of Social Work person who now rides day shifts with the Tualatin and Tigard Police Department, so that in the event that the Tualatin or Tigard Police Department has any kind of interface with someone who's experiencing a mental health crisis, we're going to have a professional there who can temper down the situation if it gets a little bit hot, and also be well trained and well connected to offer services to that person in that crisis. I think it comes down to working with community action and all the different not-for-profits we have in the region and getting people in those spots. Yes, it's super competitive to get in those spots, but working with those not-for-profits, we can get the people into those services that they need.
Well said. Good to hear, too. One of the major themes of local government over the last several years has been diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, as you schooled me the other day. What is Tualatin trying to accomplish by addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion?
One of the Tualatin City Council goals was to make Tualatin a very inclusive community where all folks of all races, creeds, beliefs are feel inclusive and included in the community and part of it. So we're going to create a diversity, equity, inclusion citizen advisory board that will kick off probably first quarter of next year as an ad hoc committee to help us form a group of folks that will help advise city council and Tualatin staff on all things that have to do with DEI. So it could be anything from serving the needs of our BIPOC community better to making sure literature is available in multiple languages that and getting the message out, because sometimes it can be a struggle to reach all the different communities here in Tualatin. There's a language barrier, there's a culture barrier, and with this DEI committee, it will help us resolve those issues ideally and have a communication flow between the city and all its residents, and not just the majority population, but everyone can enjoy the fruits of Tualatin.
Since we're talking about the workforce to some degree with DEI, I have to ask you, is Tualatin seeing the great resignation in its workforce that the rest of the country seems to be experiencing? Are people leaving the city government?
We're not losing city employees. What I hear from the owners of personnel agencies is they can't find workers. There's a lot of positions that are open at companies here in Tualatin. And so the temp agencies are struggling to find folks to work. I know in the restaurant and the hospitality business owners here in town, they're struggling to find people. So, there was a belief that the extra $300 a month or a week was stopping people from working. That was part of your unemployment insurance. That has ended, but folks aren't coming back. So the discussions the mayors have is that the belief is that folks are being choosy about what they go back to. They're seeing increased wages, and they're seeing increased better working conditions. So rather than going back to a job that they might have been miserable at or they're miserable at now, they might just quit. And with the demand of other firms, you probably land a job right away. I know, again, the temp agencies here in Tualatin, they can place you immediately because they've got quite a few jobs they need to fill. And a lot of them, they're all paying above minimum wage.
Want a job? Go to Tualatin, right?
Yeah.
You're there. The city of Tualatin is, or maybe it already has, prepared a climate action plan. What's in it, and how is it going to help lower global warming?
Yes, we're going to kick this off at the beginning of next year. The city has put out an RFP for a consulting agency to help us with this climate action plan. There's three things we're going to try to do. The first thing is to try to lower our greenhouse gas emissions as part of city operations and with the residents in Tualatin and surrounding Tualatin, because we can't just do by ourselves. We can't be an island. So we'll work in conjunction with the cities around us to get greenhouse gases down. We're going to have a community climate action plan that involves the whole community on how we can deal with our environmental issues that we might be causing and decrease our impact on the environment. And finally, we're going to look at anything, city vehicles, anything that has any kind of emission. What can we do to lower that impact on the environment? Is it get into more electric vehicles, get out of the diesel vehicles? So it's a far-reaching study and plan. I think it lasts about a year between all the different steps, because there's going to be significant community feedback required to see how we can get everyone involved in the city. It can't just be the city operations staff alone. We're going to need, like I mentioned before, the manufacturing industrial community, anybody who lives and works, or any business that operates in Tualatin will be part of this plan.
As you said, you're not an island, but with all due respect, Tualatin is a rather small island. actually. What kind of an
Yes.
impact do you really expect to have on global warming, climate change?
The recall that Metro has its climate smart goals, and the city's been operating that for years. And
Mhm.
the cities around us are all embarking on a climate action plan in some form. Lake Oswego, Tigard, Wilsonville, and I believe Sherwood are all doing the same. Some cities are doing way more than others, but if we work together, we might be able to do something. Maybe part of this part of the region down, the southeast Washington County area, that we work arm in arm to help some of the relieve some of the emissions that are in this area, and act as a model for other folks to use that template and get these carbon emissions down, get the greenhouse gases down that are impacting our environment.
Every little bit helps, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You were mayor in 2020. You were mayor in most of 2021, and you are going to be mayor in 2022. Are you cautiously optimistic that we've seen the worst of what we've been through, or are we going to go through it again?
I'm cautiously optimistic. I got to be optimistic. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. Based on my conversations with folks that are way more into COVID than I am, there's hope that by the spring of 22, that we'll be losing the masks, we'll be back quote unquote to normal, but we still got a little ways to go. We got to go through the winter. We got to make sure people get their booster shots, make sure that the kids who are eligible get their shots, and continue to be vigilant, because we just look to Europe, how it keeps spiking there. We don't want that to happen here, but I'm optimistic that this might be in our rearview mirror by end of spring next year.
We have a couple of minutes left, and I have to ask you, what's the best thing about being mayor of Tualatin, Oregon?
I just had this question the other day. It's when I visited the second graders at Bridgeport Elementary School. So I had the opportunity
Well,
to
that's about
talk with
my
the
level.
I had the opportunity to speak to four classes last week, and that's the best part of Tualatin, is speaking with children in Tualatin, their excitement, their questions. I mean, you had softball questions like, what's my favorite ice cream? To, as you just asked, when is COVID going to end, and when can we stop wearing masks? And there was one question about, why are high school kids in school longer during the day than I am here in elementary school? So I delight in the energy and the questions that kids ask. I got a funny one here. I did the walk to school a few weeks ago. One of the efforts to for physical fitness. And I was chatting with a mom and her son, and as we were walking to Bridgeport School, the Tualatin police officers had all the intersections closed off, so it'd be a safe route. As I'm going by, I'm greeting each of the officers. I know a majority of the Tualatin police officers. So at the very end of the walk, the son, who's in kindergarten, goes, "Can I ask you a question?" I go, "Sure." He goes, "You get in trouble a lot because you know all the police officers' names." So stuff like that's the stuff where it just reinvigorates you. The questions like that and the spontaneity. That's one of the best things about being mayor.
That's great. What's next for Frank Bubenik in the public arena? Where do you go from here?
We'll see. Last week, our last city council meeting, we referred to the ballot in May a change in Tualatin's term limits. Right now, there is a 12-year term limit, and it doesn't matter if you're a mayor or a councilor. So a group of residents asked to have that change because they saw the value in having an experienced mayor. So someone who spends 2 years as a city councilor and who then gets elected as mayor would be termed out after their first term. So we're looking to do a small little change to our term limits that would allow a person in that situation, which is me, and in the future, I think it'll be more folks, that will allow them to serve 2 terms. So it'd be a
Mhm.
total of 8 years as mayor. And we're going to, like I mentioned, it's going to be on the ballot in May, and I look forward to a lot of community discussion on it. There's some folks who are, adamantly against it. Folks I've talked to are, for it, but we just need public education that we're not upending term limits, we're not ending them. We're just doing a small tweak that will allow the city to have experienced leadership going into the future. Because as we all know, it takes government a long time to get things done sometimes. And the key to that is having terrific relationships with those folks you work with in city government, county government, state, and federal level.
Yeah. I wish you all the best, Mayor Bubenik. Thank you for being with us today.
I enjoyed it.
Good to hear. Thank you for watching. I'm Eric Schmidt. This has been City Talk. We'll see you again next time.